The pounding on the gate grew louder. "Name your price." A restaurant owner shoved a wad of cash through the wooden slats. Behind him, dozens of people crowded the narrow dirt road with buckets, coolers, plastic barrels, and empty fish crates. Some had driven nearly 50 miles. Others had lived less than 10 minutes away for years and had never once bothered to visit. They were all staring past the fence. Beyond the locked gate, 3 small ponds shimmered beneath rows of cottonwood trees. The water was lower than usual, but it was still clear. And just beneath the surface, hundreds of healthy fish moved through the shadows. A silver flash here, a dark tail there, the soft ripple of life. Less than 2 miles away, the riverbed had become a graveyard. Thousands of dead fish lay trapped in shrinking pools of brown water. The air above the valley carried the smell of mud, rot, and ruined livelihoods. But inside Ellie Carter's tiny fish farm, the fish were still alive. Grant Holloway stood near the front of the crowd. His boots were coated in dried river mud. His shirt, once perfectly pressed, hung loose from his shoulders. Only weeks earlier he had owned the largest fish operation in the county. Now he had nothing left to sell. He looked through the fence at Ellie and asked the question everyone wanted answered. "How do you still have water?" Ellie's hand rested on the rusted chain around the gate. She did not answer, because the thing keeping her ponds alive was not the river, and the truth had begun with a piece of land everyone else had called worthless. When Ellie Carter first walked onto the property, the ponds were barely ponds at all. They were shallow depressions filled with weeds, mosquito larvae, and thick green water. One had a cracked concrete wall running along its northern edge. Another had collapsed inward after years of erosion. The third was so dry that a young cottonwood tree had taken root in the center. Behind them stood a leaning equipment shed with half its roof missing. A rusted pipe emerged from the ground beside the shed, bent almost flat beneath a fallen beam. The real estate agent had apologized 3 times during the tour. "It used to be some kind of hatchery," he said. "Long time ago. Nobody seems to know much about it." Ellie knew more than she told him. Her father had once mentioned the land. Not often. Only in fragments. A spring beneath the western ridge. A deep well that never quite went dry. An old farmer who had tried to raise fish without depending on the river. Her father had been fascinated by the place, but he had never owned it. He had spent most of his life working as a maintenance hand at other people's farms. He repaired pumps, cleaned tanks, checked oxygen levels, and watched wealthier men take credit for surviving problems he had solved. Before he died, he left Ellie a metal box filled with old notebooks, hand-drawn maps, water measurements, feed records, and diagrams from farms across the county. Ellie had never expected those notebooks to matter. Then her husband Daniel died after a sudden illness. Medical bills consumed almost everything they had saved. The machine shop where Ellie handled inventory reduced its staff 6 months later. At 43 years old, she found herself raising her 15-year-old daughter, Hannah, on part-time wages and a shrinking bank account. The small hatchery property cost less than most houses in town. It also came with every warning imaginable. No direct river access, no modern pumping system, no proven water rights beyond the old well, no guarantee that the soil would hold water, no guarantee that the well still worked. The agent repeatedly called it a risky hobby property. Ellie bought it anyway. By the following week, nearly everyone in town knew. By the week after that, they had begun laughing. The county aquaculture cooperative met every Thursday evening in the back room of Miller's Feed and Supply. The walls were lined with photographs of prize catfish, record harvests, and men shaking hands beside tanks filled with ice. Ellie entered carrying a yellow legal pad and a folder of property records. Nearly 30 growers sat in folding chairs. Most operated ponds connected directly to the Cormack River. At the front of the room stood Grant Holloway. Grant's family had raised fish for 3 generations. His operations stretched across 80 acres of riverfront land and supplied restaurants in 3 counties. He wore clean boots to meetings because his employees handled the mud. When Ellie introduced herself and said she wanted to purchase a small batch of tilapia and catfish fingerlings, Grant looked over his glasses. "How many acres of water?" "Just under 2, Ellie said. A few people turned toward her. Grant looked at the cooperative manager. "She means 20, right?" "2, Ellie repeated. Someone in the back snorted. Grant leaned against the table. "And your intake line?" "I don't have river access." That did it. Laughter filled the room. One man coughed into his fist to hide it. Another whispered loudly, "Maybe she plans to carry water in buckets." Grant allowed the laughter to continue before raising a hand. "Mrs. Carter, fish farming isn't a backyard garden. Fish consume oxygen. They produce waste. Water has to move. I understand. Do you?" His voice had changed. The amusement was gone. Now it carried the slow, condescending patience of a man explaining something to a child. "You bought the old Weller property, didn't you?" Ellie nodded. Grant smiled. "That place isn't a fish farm. It's 3 mosquito holes and a broken shed." Several men laughed again. A younger grower near the wall added, "My cattle trough holds more water." Grant reached into his pocket, took out a silver coin, and walked to the whiteboard. With a black marker, he drew a large rectangle. "This," he said, tapping the rectangle, "is a commercial farm." Then he placed the coin against the corner of the board. "And this is Mrs. Carter's operation." The room erupted. The coin looked absurdly small beside the rectangle. Grant turned back toward Ellie. "How much did you pay?" "That isn't relevant. It is if we're trying to determine how much damage has already been done." More laughter. Ellie felt the heat move up her neck. She could see Hannah's face in her mind. Her daughter had asked that same morning whether buying the property had been a mistake. Grant folded his arms. "I'll give you some honest advice. Sell it before you waste the rest of your savings. You don't have the acreage, the water, the equipment, or the experience. My father worked in aquaculture for 30 years. Your father fixed machines because men like my father owned the farms." The room went quiet. The sentence landed harder than the laughter. Grant did not stop. There is a difference between repairing someone else's pump and knowing how to run a business. Ellie stared at him. She had come prepared to explain her plan. She had calculations for stocking density, water turnover, pond depth, oxygen demand, and seasonal evaporation. She had estimates for repairing the old well. She had her father's notes. But the faces around the room were already decided. They did not see a farmer. They saw a desperate widow playing with mud. Ellie closed the folder. "I still need the minimum order of fingerlings." Grant shook his head. "The cooperative has standards." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "She can buy the minimum, Grant. Payment is up front." Grant stepped aside. "Fine. Sell her the fish." Then he looked at Ellie one more time. "Just don't come back asking the rest of us to rescue them." Ellie walked to the front, picked up the silver coin from the whiteboard ledge, and held it out. "You forgot this." Grant smiled. "Keep it. You may need the extra capital." The laughter followed her all the way to the door. Ellie drove home with 3 insulated containers in the bed of her old truck. Inside them were fewer fish than Grant stocked in a single nursery tank. Hannah was waiting beside the shed. "How did it go?" Ellie opened the tailgate. "They sold us the fingerlings." "That isn't what I asked." Ellie lifted one of the containers. "Help me carry this." Hannah did not move. "Did they laugh?" Ellie looked at her daughter. Hannah had inherited Daniel's habit of asking direct questions. "Yes." Hannah glanced toward the ponds. The water was green. The banks were unfinished. An extension cord ran from the shed to a borrowed aerator that rattled every few seconds. "Maybe they're right." Ellie set the container down. "They might be." Hannah blinked. It was not the answer she expected. Ellie continued. "That's why we don't prove them wrong with an argument." She lifted the container again. "We prove it with fish that stay alive." For the first 3 months, the farm looked worse before it looked better. Ellie drained the first pond and discovered that the outlet pipe had cracked beneath the clay. She dug most of it out by hand because hiring an excavator would have consumed half her remaining cash. She worked at the machine shop in the mornings, repaired the ponds in the afternoons, and checked oxygen levels after dark. Hannah helped reluctantly at first. She measured feed, recorded water temperature, cleaned filters. She also listened to students at school call the property Carter's Swamp. Someone taped a drawing to her locker showing her mother fishing in a bathtub. The caption read, "Local Seafood Empire." Hannah tore it down before lunch. The next day, 2 boys blocked her path near the drinking fountain. One of them filled a paper cup with water and held it toward her. "Take this home," he said. "Your mom can start another pond." The others laughed. Hannah slapped the cup from his hand. Water splashed across the floor. She received detention for starting an argument. That evening, she told Ellie not to come to the school wearing the faded Carter Fish Farm shirt. Ellie stood at the kitchen sink with her back turned. Why? Because everyone knows. Knows what? That we live in a swamp. Ellie said nothing. Later, while cleaning the truck, she found the crumpled drawing beneath the passenger seat. She smoothed it out on the hood, studied it, then folded it carefully, and placed it inside her father's metal box. She never mentioned it. The insults continued. Grant's delivery truck passed the property twice a week. One afternoon, his foreman slowed down and shouted through the open window, "Need us to send a tanker when the puddles dry up?" The workers laughed as the truck drove away. At the feed store, a clerk asked Ellie whether she wanted fish feed or bird seed. "Hard to know what lives in those ponds," he said. Even the bank officer who reviewed her small equipment loan smiled when he saw the business name. Carter Fish Farm? He glanced at the application. "You might want to choose something less ambitious." The loan was denied. The officer claimed the risk model did not support a fish operation without river access. Ellie later learned that Grant had spoken to him 2 days earlier. He had not ordered the bank to refuse her. He had not needed to. He had simply described her project as a hobby built on a dead well, and warned that she would probably default before the first harvest. A week later, the cooperative informed Ellie that the next batch of premium fingerlings had already been allocated. Grant had placed a large advance order. The only stock left for Ellie was smaller, less uniform, and more expensive. She bought it anyway. Then a restaurant owner who had agreed to test a small weekly order suddenly canceled. He apologized and said Grant had offered him a discount on a larger supply contract. The message was clear. Grant did not merely think Ellie would fail, he intended to make sure nobody mistook her for competition. Ellie sold Daniel's old pickup instead. The money paid for a second-hand pump, 2 aerators, a load of bentonite clay, and enough pipe to connect the ponds. The pump failed 9 days later. By the time Ellie reached the first pond, several dozen tilapia were floating on their sides. The remaining fish crowded near the aerator. Hannah stood knee-deep in the water, holding a hose connected to the emergency tank. "We're losing them!" Ellie pulled the pump housing apart with shaking hands. The motor had burned. There was no replacement, no backup generator, no money for a new unit until payday. For 6 hours, Ellie and Hannah moved water manually. They filled barrels, dragged hoses, used a borrowed gasoline pump from a neighbor's cattle operation. By midnight, the surviving fish had stabilized. They lost nearly a third of the first batch. Hannah sat on the pond bank, wet and exhausted. Grant would have a backup pump. Yes. He would have employees. Yes. He wouldn't have to sell Dad's truck. No. Hannah wiped mud from her hands. Then how are we supposed to beat someone like that? Ellie watched the aerator break the surface into white circles. "We don't have to beat Grant." She pointed toward the water. "We have to understand this." The rusted pipe beside the shed had bothered Ellie from the beginning. It was too large to be a drain, and too deeply anchored to be temporary. Her father's notebook contained a sketch of the western ridge with a line running beneath the old Weller property. Beside the line he had written, "Limestone bed, cold water, slow recharge, never pump hard." Ellie hired Walter Reese, a retired well technician who lived outside town. Walter arrived in a faded service van and spent nearly an hour examining the pipe. "Someone sealed this badly," he said. "Can it still work?" "Maybe. That means yes or no. It means water doesn't care what answer you need." He removed the damaged cap, lowered a weighted line, and listened. The line continued downward, 30 feet, 50, 70. At 94 feet, it touched water. Walter looked at Ellie. "That's deeper than I expected." He tested the well for 2 days. The flow was not impressive. It could not fill a large commercial pond. It could not support high-density stocking. It certainly could not compete with a direct river intake. But the water was clean, its temperature remained stable, and even after several hours of controlled pumping, the level recovered. Walter placed the test results on the hood of Ellie's truck. "You have water." "How much?" "Not enough to be careless." Ellie smiled for the first time in weeks. "That may be enough." Walter did not smile back. "You listen carefully. That aquifer recharges slowly. If you run a large pump continuously, you could draw it down and destroy the well." "I won't. Everyone says that until they start making money. I won't." Walter studied her face, then pointed toward the ponds. "You keep those small. You recycle everything you can. Use shade, Reduce evaporation. Never stock more fish than the system can carry. Ellie opened her father's notebook. That's exactly what he wrote. Walter looked at the handwriting. I knew your father. Ellie looked up. He was one of the few men around here who understood that having water and owning water aren't the same thing. Ellie did not tell the cooperative about the well, not because she wanted to deceive anyone, because nothing had been proven yet. A well was not a miracle. It was only a narrow margin of survival. She deepened the ponds so the water would remain cooler. She planted willows and cottonwoods along the western banks. She built gravel and reed filtration beds between the ponds. Wastewater flowed through the beds, where plants absorbed nutrients before the water returned. She repaired 2 concrete tanks inside the shed and used them to isolate new fingerlings. She installed float valves to reduce overflow. Every gallon was measured. Every loss was recorded. When a restaurant offered to buy more fish than she could reliably produce, she declined. The owner laughed. You're turning down your first serious order? I can't fill it without overcrowding. That's what aerators are for. Aerators don't create water. He ordered from Grant instead. Grant expanded again. His workers excavated 4 new ponds along the river. At the next cooperative meeting, he announced a contract with a regional grocery distributor. The room applauded. Then he glanced at Ellie. How many ponds now, Mrs. Carter? 3. No expansion? No. Still protecting your puddles? A few people laughed. Grant walked toward the same whiteboard he had used before. He drew another large rectangle and tapped it. This is what growth looks like. Then he placed a different coin at the edge of the board. And this is what fear looks like. The room laughed again. Ellie reached into her pocket and felt the original silver coin he had given her months earlier. She had carried it to every cooperative meeting. She did not take it out. Not yet. She studied the photograph of Grant's new operation. The ponds were broad, shallow, and densely stocked. Each depended on high-volume river pumps. Congratulations, she said. Grant seemed disappointed by the lack of resistance. He smiled at the room. Some people are building businesses. Others are preserving science projects. The first profitable harvest from Carter Fish Farm was small, so small that Grant's operation harvested more fish before lunch than Ellie sold in an entire month. But her survival rate was unusually high. Her feed costs were lower than expected. Her fish tasted cleaner because the water contained less sediment. A local restaurant began buying a limited weekly order, then another. Ellie paid off the aerators. She bought a used generator. She repaired the 3rd pond. Hannah began designing labels for the farm. For the first time, the operation felt real. Then the rain stopped. At first, nobody worried. Dry spells were common. The Cormack River dropped slightly each summer and rose again with the autumn storms. Grant told the cooperative that the county reservoir remained above 60%. People panic over weather, he said. Fish don't need panic. They need management. Ellie watched the river gauge. She also watched her well. The water level fell by 7 inches. Not enough to cause immediate concern. Enough to make her reduce stocking. She harvested part of the tilapia early. She moved breeding stock into the concrete tanks. She purchased fuel for the generator before prices increased. She stretched shade cloth over the nursery pond. Hannah asked whether something was wrong. Not yet, Ellie said. What does that mean? It means we prepare while preparation still looks unnecessary. At the cooperative meeting, Ellie suggested that growers reduce stocking density and test emergency storage systems. Grant leaned back in his chair. Based on what? River flow has fallen 23% since spring. It has been lower. The water temperature is rising. It is summer. The long-range forecast shows continued heat. Grant spread his hands. There it is. A woman with 2 acres of water is advising 80-acre farms how to operate. The room laughed. Ellie continued. If the river drops below the lower intakes, the pumps will pull sediment. High-density ponds could lose oxygen quickly. Grant looked toward the cooperative manager. Should we also ask her how to run our contracts? Maybe she can explain volume purchasing while she's here. Another grower raised his coffee cup. To the puddle profit. Laughter erupted again. Grant took the coin from the whiteboard and flicked it across the table toward Ellie. It spun once, twice, then fell flat beside her notes. Here, he said. Put that into your emergency fund. Ellie picked up the coin. Now she had 2. She gathered her papers. Grant called after her. Don't worry, Mrs. Carter. When your well runs dry, we'll sell you water. The heat intensified. Pastures faded from green to yellow, cattle gathered beneath trees. The river withdrew from its banks, leaving broad shelves of cracked mud. Grant's pumps ran longer to move the same volume of water. His electricity costs rose. The water entering his ponds carried more silt. His employees cleaned intake screens twice a day, then 4 times. Several growers began losing fish during the hottest afternoons. Grant blamed feed quality. He increased aeration. Ellie reduced feed. Grant ordered more fingerlings to meet the grocery contract. Ellie canceled her planned expansion. People called her timid. A feed supplier told her she was leaving money on the table. You could double production with what you've built. I could also double the oxygen demand. The river will recover. My farm does not use the river, the supplier laughed. Then you should be even less worried. Ellie looked at him. That isn't how limits work. The first major die-off occurred at Peterson Aquaculture. 16,000 catfish surfaced overnight. By sunrise, workers were removing them with nets. 2 days later, another farm lost half its tilapia. The county issued an advisory asking agricultural users to reduce withdrawals. Grant refused. His contract required continuous supply. He had loans on the new ponds. He had payroll. He had refrigerated trucks. He had built his operation around volume. Reducing production would expose how fragile the expansion had become. He appeared on local radio and accused county officials of exaggerating the danger. The Cormack has supported farms for generations, he said. One dry summer will not change that. Ellie heard the interview while repairing a valve. She turned off the radio. That evening, Walter arrived without being called. He checked the well. The water level had fallen another 2 feet. We need to reduce pumping, he said. I already cut it 20%. Cut it again. I'll lose growth. You'll lose the well if you don't. Ellie stood beside the test pipe. The largest fish were almost ready for market. Selling them early would bring a lower price. Keeping them required more water, more oxygen, and more risk. She looked toward the nursery pond. Start the harvest tomorrow. Hannah stared at her. All of them? Half. But the restaurants are paying more next month. There may not be a next month for these fish. Grant saw Ellie's harvest truck leaving the property. He stopped beside the gate. You're selling early? Yes. Prices are weak. I know. You finally giving up? No. Grant looked toward the ponds. You spent all that money building a system, and now you're dumping fish before they reach full weight. I'm reducing demand. Grant smiled. Demand is what pays the bills. Water is what keeps the product alive. He shook his head. You're afraid of success. Ellie closed the gate. And you're afraid of getting smaller. For the first time, Grant did not have an answer ready. The county received no rain for another 18 days. The reservoir fell below 40%. The upper section of the river stopped flowing completely. In the lower valley, the current narrowed to a shallow channel. Grant's intake pumps began sucking air. Workers extended the pipes, then extended them again. They placed excavators in the riverbed to dig temporary collection pools. The deeper they dug, the muddier the water became. Fish began gasping at the surface of Grant's ponds. He ran every aerator. Then one of the electrical transformers overheated. 2 ponds lost circulation for less than 40 minutes. That was enough. By morning, the water was covered in dead fish. Grant stood on the bank while his employees dragged nets through the pond. The grocery distributor canceled the contract that afternoon. The bank called the following morning. Across the valley, similar losses spread. Ponds connected to the river became hot, stagnant basins. Farmers tried hauling water, but tanker deliveries could not match the demand. Some sold surviving fish at a fraction of their normal weight. Others lost everything. Then the main river channel disappeared. Not slowly, not gracefully. One day, brown water still crept between the exposed stones. The next morning, the channel was broken into isolated pools. By noon, those pools were filled with dying fish. The Cormack River had run dry. Hannah climbed onto the fence post and stared toward the valley. A column of black birds circled above the riverbed. The wind carried the smell of decay. Is that going to happen here? She asked. Ellie checked the oxygen meter. If we make one mistake, yes. The ponds were surviving, but they were under pressure. The well was weaker. The air temperature had reached 106 degrees. Evaporation stole hundreds of gallons a day. Ellie stopped all unnecessary pumping. She fed the fish before dawn, when oxygen levels were safest. She moved part of the stock into the deepest pond. She added emergency shade. At night, she and Hannah slept in the shed beside the generator. Every few hours, an alarm sounded, a blocked filter, a low oxygen reading, a drop in tank pressure. The farm was not thriving, it was hanging on. That distinction mattered. When the first buyer arrived, Ellie refused him. He owned a restaurant in town, and had once joked that her fish were raised in bathwater. Now he offered triple her regular price. "I'll take everything." "No." 4 times. "No." He leaned toward her. "You don't understand. Nobody else has fish." "I understand." "Then why are you refusing money?" "Because I don't have enough to sell everything." He looked past her. "You have ponds full of fish. I have breeding stock, fingerlings, food supply, and a drought that isn't over." He lowered his voice. "Name your price." Ellie closed the gate. By evening, 10 buyers had come. By the next morning, the narrow road was blocked. That was when Grant arrived. He did not push to the front. He stood behind the restaurant owners, store managers, and families holding empty coolers. Several people from the cooperative were already there. So was the bank officer who had denied Ellie's loan. So was the feed store clerk. So was the restaurant owner who had canceled her first contract after Grant undercut her. Someone recognized Grant and stepped aside. The crowd became quieter. Everyone knew what had happened to Holloway Aquaculture. Grant walked toward the fence. His face looked older than it had a month earlier. "How do you still have water?" he asked. Ellie studied him. The same man who had called her farm mosquito holes now stood outside those holes asking for help. She could have repeated his words. She could have told him to carry water in buckets. She could have reminded him that her father had understood farms better than he did. Every insult was still there, stored carefully. The laughter in the cooperative room, the coin beside the whiteboard, the joke at Hannah's school, the denied loan, the lost fingerling order, the canceled contract, the truck drivers shouting from the road. For one long moment, the entire crowd waited for Ellie to humiliate him. Grant swallowed. "I need breeding stock." Nobody spoke. Grant Holloway, the largest grower in the county, was asking the widow with 3 puddles to help him start over. Ellie reached into her pocket. She removed the 2 silver coins he had used to mock her and placed them on the wooden gatepost between them. Grant stared at them. "I believe these are yours," she said. He said nothing. Ellie looked directly at him. "You told me not to come back asking for rescue." Grant lowered his eyes. Ellie's voice remained calm. "I didn't come back, Grant." She glanced at the line of desperate buyers behind him. "You did." The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter she had endured. Grant's jaw tightened, but he did not walk away. "How much can you spare?" he asked. "And what will you put them in?" Grant looked toward the dry riverbed. "I'll find a way." "That is not an answer." He raised his eyes again. Ellie stepped closer to the fence. "If I sell you breeding stock and you rebuild the same system, the same thing will happen again. I have no system left." "Then build a different one." "What do you want?" "Reduce the acreage." His expression hardened. "The ponds are my business. The river was your business." A few people shifted behind him. Ellie continued. "You will build storage ponds. You will lower stocking density. You will install recirculation. You will stop treating emergency warnings like personal insults." Grant's face tightened. "You're giving me terms? I'm protecting the fish. You think this is revenge?" "No." Her voice remained level. "Revenge would be selling them to someone else and watching your farm disappear." The words hit harder because she did not raise her voice. Grant looked through the fence at the water. "What else?" "You share the new design with every small grower in the cooperative." He hesitated. The old version of him would have laughed. The old version of him would have walked away. But the old version of him had a river. "I agree." Ellie unlocked the gate. "Everyone leaves their containers outside," she said. "We are organizing sales by household and business need." The restaurant owner protested. "I was here first. This is not an auction. I offered 5 times your price. And I said no." Ellie divided the surviving stock carefully. A portion went to local families at controlled prices. A portion went to restaurants willing to accept weekly limits. A portion remained untouched as breeding stock. She sold fingerlings to small growers first because they had fewer resources and no access to large credit lines. Grant received enough to restart 1 pond, not 80 acres. One pond. When he returned with a transport tank, Hannah handed him the invoice. Grant looked at the farm logo she had designed. Carter Fish Farm. Beneath it was a line. Take only what the water can give. He recognized Hannah. You're Ellie's daughter. Yes. Grant looked toward the ponds. I heard people at school gave you a hard time. Hannah folded her arms. They learned it from adults. Grant had no defense. She handed him the invoice. Your fish are ready. The cooperative meeting resumed 2 weeks later in the same back room at Miller's Feed and Supply. Many chairs were empty. Some growers were still cleaning dead fish from their ponds. Others had already declared bankruptcy. The photographs on the walls looked almost cruel now. Grant did not stand at the front. He sat in the second row. Ellie placed Walter's water tests, her father's notebook, and 3 years of farm records on the table. Beside them, she placed the 2 silver coins. The cooperative manager asked her to explain how the ponds had survived. Several people expected a dramatic secret, a hidden underground river, an unlimited spring, a rare machine, something they could purchase and install. Ellie opened the notebook. The well helped, she said, but the well did not save the farm. A grower frowned. Without it, you would have lost everything. Yes. Then it saved you. No. If I had stocked these ponds the way most river farms stocked theirs, I would have emptied the well before the river went dry. She showed them the pumping records. The source is small. It recharges slowly. It works because the farm stays within its limits. She pointed to the filtration diagrams. We recycle water, then the depth measurements. We reduced surface heating, then the stocking records. We kept fewer fish than the ponds could hold during ideal conditions. One man shook his head. That means lower profit. It means lower profit when everything goes well. Ellie looked around the room. And fish when it does not. No one laughed. She placed her father's notebook at the center of the table. My father wrote this sentence more than 20 years ago. She read it aloud. Water abundance creates careless farmers. Water limits create observant ones. Grant stared at the floor. Ellie closed the notebook. You thought my farm was too small to matter, but its size forced me to measure everything you believed would always be available. The room remained silent. Then Grant stood. The movement drew every eye. He walked to the front, but he did not take Ellie's place. He stood beside her. I called her farm a collection of mosquito holes. Nobody moved. I used a coin to show everyone how little I thought it was worth. He looked down at the 2 coins on the table. I told her father had only repaired machines for men like mine. His voice tightened. I made sure suppliers gave my operation priority. I told a banker her farm would fail. I undercut her first restaurant contract because I wanted to prove she did not belong here. Several people looked at one another. Grant continued. I had more land, more equipment, more contracts, more credit, and more water. He paused, and she understood all 5 better than I did. His face reddened. Her father understood them better than I did too. The confession did not restore the dead fish. It did not erase every insult. But it changed the room. For the first time, the laughter belonged entirely to the past. The rains returned 6 weeks later. At first, only a light drizzle darkened the dust. Then the sky opened. Water moved through the dry river channel again. The valley celebrated. But the farms did not return to normal. Normal had failed them. The cooperative created a shared emergency hatchery. Growers installed backup storage tanks. New stocking limits were tied to seasonal water levels. A river gauge alert system sent warnings directly to every member. Grant rebuilt only 12 acres of ponds. He installed recirculation beds modeled after Ellie's system. He invited smaller growers to inspect them without charge. The bank restructured part of his debt after he presented the new risk plan. He never regained the unquestioned authority he once carried. That was part of the consequence. Respect returned slowly. Power did not. Carter Fish Farm remained small. Investors offered Ellie money to purchase surrounding land. A grocery distributor proposed building a large processing facility beside the property. Ellie declined. Hannah, who once feared the farm was an embarrassment, began studying aquatic ecology. The school that had once suspended her for knocking a cup of water from a boy's hand asked whether students could visit Carter Fish Farm for a science program. Hannah read the email twice. Then she laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just once. The first group arrived carrying notebooks. Among them was the same boy who had offered her a paper cup for another pond. He avoided her eyes. Hannah handed him a water testing kit. "Start with the oxygen level," she said. She created a weekend program teaching local students how water quality, stocking density, soil, temperature, and plant filtration affected fish survival. Inside the equipment shed, the old joke drawing remained pinned to the wall. Local seafood empire. Not as a wound, as a record. One evening, Hannah found Ellie standing beside the largest pond. Rainwater still clung to the cottonwood leaves. The pond was full again. "You could expand now," Hannah said. "I could. Grant says the new system could support twice as many fish." "It probably could." "Then why not?" Ellie watched a ring spread across the surface where a fish had risen. "Because surviving one mistake doesn't give us permission to make a larger one." Hannah smiled. "You sound like Grandpa." "I hope so." Near the gate stood a new wooden sign. The original sign had been vandalized during the first year. Someone had painted the words, "Widow's Swamp," across it. Ellie had never thrown the old board away. She mounted it beneath the new sign. Visitors often asked why. She told them the truth. People should see what they believed before they see what they learned. Above the scarred board, the new sign read, "Carter Fish Farm, take only what the water can give." Beneath the sign, sealed behind a small square of glass, were the 2 silver coins Grant had once used to show the whole cooperative how insignificant Ellie's farm was. They looked very small there, exactly as they always had. Beyond them, 3 modest ponds reflected the evening sky. They were not the largest in the county. They never would be. But when the river had nothing left to give, the smallest farm in the valley had kept an entire community alive.